Okay then gang, so in this lesson we're going to make our first middleware function, and that middleware is going to run just before we enter the logout route, so that we can log the user out by deleting the user cookie in the browser, and then we'll probably also redirect the user back to the login page as well. So then, how do we do this? Well, there's a few different ways that we can make and use middleware for routes in Nuxt. But to begin with, we're going to make the middleware directly within the page or route that we want to run it before, which in our case is inside the logout page, right? And when we make the middleware directly within the page like this, we call it Inline Middleware. So we can make this middleware by coming to the setup script, and we use a function provided by Nuxt called define page meta, and we invoke that function. Now, as an argument, we pass in an object which contains many different optional properties to configure this page. One of those properties is the middleware property, so let's add that on. And then the value of the middleware property can be a function. And this middleware function will then be run anytime we navigate to this logout page, and it runs before the page itself gets output to the browser. So then inside this function, we'll eventually delete the user cookie to mimic the user logging out of the application. But before we do that, we're going to accept a couple of different arguments into this function, which Nuxt automatically gives to us. And these arguments are called to and from. They're both objects, and they provide context as to where a user is navigating from and to which route they're navigating to. So what I'll do quickly is just log these two objects out to the console so that we can take a look at them when we go to the logout page. Alright then, so I'm going to head to the logout page over here. When I click this, before the page actually renders, we're going to run that middleware we just created. Now, you won't notice any kind of delay because that function runs almost instantly. So you will see the page straight away, but we'll also hopefully see that log over here as well. So let's go to logout, and yeah, we can see these two objects, to and from. So we can see this object to is saying that the full path of where we're going to is /logout, the hash if there is one, href. Then we have these other things down here. We have the name of the route, logout, a path again, any parameters in the routes, any queries, etc. And also this thing right here, where we've been redirected from, if we have been redirected. So there's quite a bit of information about where we're going to, and the same is true for where we've come from. And this says that we're basically coming from the home page, which is called index, okay? So that's pretty cool. We get access to that every time we use a bit of middleware in Nuxt. So then we have a middleware function created, and we've seen how we get access to these two arguments inside it. Now what I'd like to do is delete the user cookie by setting its value back to null. So I'm going to delete the console log right here, and then we're going to access the user cookie by saying const user, and we're going to set that equal to use cookie, and we invoke that. And the cookie we want to access is the user cookie, so pass user in as a string. So now that we have that, we can change the value of the cookie by saying user.value and setting it equal to something else. Now, we want to set it equal to null, which essentially removes the cookie, and in the eyes of the demo application then, it logs the user out or mimics that. All right, cool. So let's try this out now. All right, so I'm back on the home page, and we've got DevTools open so we can see any cookies, and we can see we still have that user cookie over here. So we're still logged in. Now, if I go to the login page over here, it's going to run that middleware. It's going to hopefully delete that cookie for us, and then in the eyes of this demo application, kind of log us out. So let's try this out. Go to logout, and you might need to refresh over here to see this take effect. But if we refresh, now we can see that that cookie has gone. And if we go back to the home page, we can see now in the index page, we no longer output the user because it doesn't exist. Now I'm going to log in again, this time as Peach, and then any old password. Log in. I'm going to refresh over here. We can see we're logged in because we see Peach, but if we refresh over here, we see that user cookie again. If we log out again and refresh, now that user cookie has gone. So this is all kind of working now. So when we make a middleware function for a route, it runs that function before outputting the page to the browser. But then once the function's been run, it continues to then render the page template and output it to the screen. And this is normal behavior and what we typically expect. But in this scenario, it doesn't really make sense to render a simple page with a logout title once a user logs out. Technically, you could make a page with a custom logout message or something, but I think for us, a better approach is to redirect the user to the login page after they've logged out. So to do this, we can use a built-in Nuxt function called navigate to say we want to navigate the user to the login route. And we also have to return this function as well for this to work. So then, now we're saying once we delete this cookie, navigate back to the login page, and that way, after this function runs, the logout page never actually gets rendered because we redirect the user to the login page and we return that as well before it gets a chance to render the page. So you can see I've already logged in as Bowser and we have the user cookie over here. What I'm going to do is head to the logout page. It's going to run the middleware, log us out, delete the cookie, but then also navigate us to the login page. So hopefully this all works. Go to logout, and yet now we see the login page, and if we refresh over here, we no longer see the user cookie. So that's all working. Awesome. Okay then, my friends, so now we've seen how to make a middleware function. Let's try making another one, this time on the index page. So currently, whether we're logged in or out, we can view this index page. If we're logged in and that user cookie exists, then we also output the username. If we're not logged in and the user cookie doesn't exist, then we don't output the username, but we can still view the page. Now, what I'd like to do is make some middleware so that when a user isn't logged in, so when the user cookie doesn't have a value, we navigate the user away from this page to the login page. So essentially, we'll be using middleware to make some kind of route guard, so only authenticated users can view the page, right? Okay then, so let's give this a shot. First, we need to make the middleware function inside the page meta, much like we did for the logout page. So I'm actually just going to grab that code and paste it inside the index page so we can use it. And then we just need to delete the body of the function so we can add some different logic. Right then, so in here, we need to access the user cookie. So I'll say const authenticated is equal to use cookie. And we want the user cookie. And you don't have to call it authenticated, by the way. You can call it user or something else, whatever you want. But since I'm just using it to check whether a user is authenticated, I'm calling it authenticated. Makes sense to me. So then, now I'll say if, and then parentheses, and then not authenticated.value. And then I'm going to do something. So I'm accessing the value for the cookie right here. And I'm saying if this does not have a value, then we'll run some code, right? And at this point, we know that the user cookie doesn't exist or it doesn't have a value. And that means that the user isn't logged in. And that means inside this if block, we can return the navigate to function to navigate to the login route instead. And when we do that, we block the user from seeing this page. It never gets rendered to the browser because the middleware function runs first, and then we navigate the user away when they're not logged in. So now we've implemented a simple kind of route guard for this page. And before we preview this, I want to make one thing clear. This is not a robust authentication system to protect your site data. This is just some front-end logic to implement a user flow and a user experience based on their current authentication status. If you're showing sensitive data on these pages that you want to protect, you absolutely do need to protect that data from unauthenticated users on the back end as well, okay? Alright, so let's give this one more go. I'm going to log in as Luigi this time. Any old password, doesn't matter. I log in and I can see the index page. We can see we're logged in as Luigi. I'm going to refresh over here to see that cookie as well. Now, I can view any page while we're logged in, right? But if I log out now and refresh over here, we see we no longer have that cookie. I can still go to the admin page because we don't add that kind of route guard middleware to the admin page where we do an authentication check. However, if I try going to the home page where we do have that middleware, we're going to see that because we're no longer logged in, we don't have that user cookie, we get redirected to the login page. So let's check this out, home, and yet now we see the login page. So this is working. I can log in again, and I can see that index page because we pass that authentication check. We can see the user cookie over here, so we can't see this page. But now everything's working. Awesome. All right, so there's two basic examples of how we can use middleware, inline middleware, directly inside the pages. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at named middleware.